Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. Sick but still getting better. So this video is probably going to be out of date by the time you see it. So tonight, it's Sunday right now, and tonight Harry's doing an interview on ITV. So I'm sure by the time this gets to you, it'll be out of date and there'll be so much more to talk about. But I wanted to talk about the kind of latest thing that the media are now doing, which is probably the most bizarre thing I've seen yet. And it's to do with Harry and the Taliban and Afghanistan and being a soldier in the military. So obviously people are rushing to translate the Spanish version, I think it's the Spanish version of Spare, and they're trying to like misquote, and the press are doing what they usually do and trying to create outrage. But the most interesting thing for me, and this is coming from the perspective of someone who I like to be very open about my biases on here, because I feel like everyone is biased, nobody's unbiased. And if you're new to this channel and you don't really know where I come from, like, you know, politically, I'm very left-wing, I'm a socialist, I'm mostly anti-war, so I'd probably be a pacifist in a perfect world. I know we don't live in a perfect world, but I'm very critical of the military, and especially a lot of what we're told about our military here in Britain. I come from a mixed family. I'm half Indian, half English, so I know quite a lot about how India was colonised, for example, and how if you're not from Britain, we don't teach about the British Empire. We still have this kind of myth of like patriotism and the royal family, and we are always the good guys in every conflict around the world. And that's the sort of conditioning that we have here, which I think is kind of mirrored in, I mean, you see it in lots of countries, but I think in the US, if you're watching from the US, it's maybe a similar kind of thing. So obviously this is a complex issue, and I've spoken before on this channel, and I will talk in more detail about, you know, the destabilization of the Middle East, the Islamophobia, the dehumanization of people from the Middle East that goes on here in our media and in our society, and how we kind of like this kind of hero, stiff upper lip mentality, because we don't really like people questioning hierarchies. We like our heroes to be silent, really. You know, so I'm not pro-military. I'm anti a lot of the stuff the military does and the way the military runs. I think it often grooms people that are quite vulnerable, especially people from working class backgrounds. It gives them ideas of, you know, oh, you'll have a community, you'll have worth, you'll be a hero. And obviously we have so much poverty here. You know, we have people, even veterans who've served, end up coming back here in Britain, and then they end up homeless, or they end up having to use food banks, or they have severe post-traumatic stress disorder, or, you know, which if we actually look at what the military is, and this isn't going to be me going off about my thoughts on the whole military thing, I will make a video for that, but if we think about what the military actually does in that process, I think anyone who supports the military understands that the process that we put soldiers through, something that they get taught, is essentially their job is to do what the government wants them to do, and it means they have to kill bad people abroad. And in order for that to work, we have to take people who often have a generous spirit, high empathy, want to be heroes, want to do something good for their community, want to feel a lot of worth, and we have to train them in how to dehumanize the enemy. And this is just how war works. You know, I think we all know this. And I'm not saying that all war is wrong, because I'm somebody who thinks that you know, sometimes if there's oppression, you can't ask the person who's oppressed to just sit there and take it. You know, I will never hold it against someone for wanting to fight back against oppression. But I'm a Christian myself, so I was raised an atheist and I'm now a Christian, and I'm very, very critical of war. I always think diplomacy should come first, and I think if we're going to go to war, we at least need to have all the facts. So for example, here in Britain, sorry to get all political, I will get to Harry in a moment, so the war in Iraq, for example, like the war on terror, the Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, is considered by many people here to be really untrustworthy and a war criminal, because he basically told us lies about why we were going into the war. And obviously lots of innocents from the Middle East got destabilised, lots of innocent Iraqis died, and lots of our own soldiers were going in on lies. You know, they weren't open about what they were going there for, and, you know, our role, and it just led to so much pain. And that man still goes to the cenotaph every Remembrance Day and wears a poppy, which is a complete joke. And also what I want to say going into this is, you know, since I started making videos about Meghan and Harry, I've been accused of being a Meghan and Harry stan, etc. And I feel like I should just be really open about the fact that I stand with them because I recognise them as victims of abuse. I haven't followed them beyond feeling very, very bad for Harry being part of the traumatic event that happened with his mother, and that I'm interested in the idea of royalty, the systems of modern monarchy, and you know what that means for the individuals within them. I'm into social justice, so I'm interested in how Meghan's been made into this hate figure. Like, you know, it's kind of given someone an avatar to put all their racial hatred onto, you know. Also sexism issues, because as I've said in other videos, and I won't keep getting into it, but you know, Harry being seen as not masculine enough because he respects his wife. So it's a lot of these old systems being kind of thrown at Meghan and Harry, who have ended up as these sort of avatars. And I would say, you know, I don't know their personal politics. I'm probably quite a lot left of them from what I know. I mean, they might be more left than I know. I haven't read Harry's book or anything. I'm a socialist. I'm very left wing. I'm very anti-monarchy. I'm not here to run some fan account. You know, I don't do that, even when it's people I really respect. Like, I really, really respect a politician called Jeremy Corbyn. If he does something I think is wrong, I'll say it, because all we have in this life is our voice and our opinions, and I hope that we are all open to learning and changing our opinions. And I do my own research. I say what I think is right, what I think is good, and I'm very reflective on that. I'm not just going to sit here and defend something that someone says that's wrong just because I like the person. That's not how the channel works. So that's kind of, you know, that kind of so that accusation was just really frustrating, because I'm coming at this as a left-wing socialist who is incredibly anti the monarchy. Who's incredibly anti the monarchy, and has often been called like a crank, or like, you know, in this country, if you question the military, you know, you get the whole you're unpatriotic and you hate the troops. Really, it comes from a care for the people, the soldiers themselves, because I think that often they get sent to these wars, they get desensitized, they get taught to, you know, there's a lot of trauma, they get injured, they're treated like cannon fodder for corrupt politicians. They're not really told the truth about what's going on, and then after they've been conditioned to do that, they're just abandoned, and then they're not able to talk about the trauma they faced because they've been taught that it's stiff upper lip, and, you know, real men don't talk about their emotions. And I think that's why you get so many veterans who really struggle. There's probably so many more than we even know about because of that conditioning they've gone through. And I can't help but notice, as someone who is very interested in indoctrination and emotional abuse, that the way they train soldiers is very worrying in some ways, because it is that kind of abusive mentality. It's the idea that you are training empathy out of people. You are not teaching this is the difficult thing. A soldier's job is to follow their orders. I understand that's the job. But I am very much of the idea that we should always be questioning authorities. But these people are very vulnerable. Good people. I have nothing against soldiers who think they're doing what is right. And we do see this around the world. You know, every regime, be they good or bad, the soldiers have to go through a process where they have to become, unless they're just completely psychopathic to begin with, they have to be desensitized to killing. That's just the reality, and we all know that, right? People don't want to talk about it unless they're people like me who are anti-war and on the left, who do want to talk about it, and then we get called terrorist sympathizers and told that we don't care about the troops, when actually we probably care about the soldiers very much, and their mental well-being, and also the refugees that come from destabilized regions, all those different things. But we all know that, right? Now let's get to Harry. So we know Harry has grown up in an environment. So let's just, you already know what we're referring to. So obviously it came out that Harry has killed 25 people in Afghanistan. That's his number, and he's spoken about that. Now the thing that is just so shocking to me, bizarre, is watching our media, especially right-wing outlets that are very patriotic, very pro the military, who would formerly have called him a war hero, who would have celebrated him, you know, he'd be up on a pedestal to these people, suddenly pretending like they're squeamish about the reality of war, when this is what they support. And more than that, these are outlets that actively encourage the dehumanization of people from different places, right? They do this constantly. And to see them have so much hatred for Harry and be so afraid of him as a whistleblower when it comes to the royal family, that they're effectively taking on the same perspectives that me and people like me on the left have had, it's just laughable. It's absolutely bizarre. And if we look as well, we look at royals in the military, and to me this feels like gaslighting in itself. Because in this country, these pro-royal, very right-wing people, and they're very much, you know, if someone doesn't wear a poppy, they're in for it. You know, you're not supporting the troops. You know, there's no nuance to them. It's just very much support the troops, patriotism, and anyone who questions any of that, even when it comes to the well-being of the troops themselves, is a bad, evil lefty. Now, all of a sudden, I'm seeing these people act like Harry talking about the actual reality of the conditioning that soldiers go through, because people aren't just able to kill. I feel like we all know that. You know, if you're a soldier, that is something that you are trained to do. There is psychological conditioning to get you to be able to kill. I'm so angry to see these same people who are so pro-war, who don't want to talk about the Middle East. They don't actually want to talk about these issues. They don't actually care about the fact there's all these refugees that are being displaced and what our governments are doing and how they're lying to us. Suddenly they're now calling it distasteful because someone who's gone through that grooming process is talking about the dehumanization and how in order to kill someone you have to think, right, we're the goodies, they're the baddies, we strike first, it's chess pieces. They're just acting totally ignorant. And if someone, and I agree, I'm anti-war myself, I'm very critical of the military, it is distasteful to hear it. But for people to suddenly pretend, because it's Harry saying it, that suddenly they've developed this idea that, oh, maybe that's not very nice. Or it's so transparent. And we also need to look at Harry and his family and his background, because bear in mind, Harry's coming from a place where he's been the spare, you know, and I think something that draws a lot of vulnerable people into the military, obviously Harry's not working class, but something that draws people in. I mean, if you see in our country, we've got, you know, these adverts saying that, you know, be the best, you get to travel the world. And bear in mind, we have a lot of poverty in this country, so that's not an option for many young people. Make friends, make your own family, you know, it's a place to be active and have fun and do something and be good and be noble and mean something. So Harry, obviously, in that family, I think, you know, there's criticisms of the royal family, you know, being quite useless, etc. Harry is one of the only, you know, modern royals that has actually, rather than just doing it for show, has actually done it. And that's because he's been brought up by these royalist, patriotic people, these pro-war people who, might I add, you often see the royal family covered in badges and medals that they couldn't possibly have earned. It's so disrespectful, you know. It's a complete joke. It's like a costume to them. And in our most recent remembrance service, it ended not with the bereaved families or the troops. It ended with, it was like a God Save the Queen, sung to the royal box. So Harry's been brought up with this link, right, between the military and the royal family. And in order to actually do something and be useful and actually go out and not be useless, not be a spare, to actually be on a kind of level playing field with people, he's gone and he's joined the military and he's served for 10 years. Now, the media have known this for a very, very long time, and they also are being... Sorry, it's absolutely ridiculous. So what do they think happens when we send young people out to Afghanistan or to Iraq? What do they think the reality of war is? Because these people aren't anti-war, they're not pro-diplomacy, they're the sort of people that laugh at people that are anti-war. And also, it's a complete joke. They don't care about those people, they don't care about the troops, they don't care about the people that get groomed in and they have to learn this dehumanisation, and then when they come out, they're suddenly, oh, it's not the dumb thing to talk about it. And that, you know, from my background of what I research and systems and oppression and indoctrination, one of the most worrying things is the fact that I hadn't realised it was such a taboo for a soldier to come out of that situation and talk about it and that process. And I wonder how much more trauma there is for soldiers because they're taught that it's weak to speak about it. It's a shameful thing to speak about, you know? I believe, I'm a Christian, and I believe that taking a life wounds you. No matter what context that's in, it changes a whole life, you know. It changes the way you think about life. And I'm seeing these people, I'm seeing these pro-royal, very pro-military, very uncritical people now saying that Harry is a villain to the military for basically having done what the military exists to do. It's just delusional at this point. That's what the military does. Unless you're someone who's critical of the military, then it's absolutely absurd. It's completely absurd to me. To the extent that ITV are actually now platforming the Taliban, which I just need to point out to you, this is absolutely unheard of. To have imagined that in any other context, from our main channels, let alone our right-wing outlets, it's just, you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't have believed it possible, but that is how deep this goes. And again, I think it's something to do with the fear of the truths of Britain and what we're built on. We're going through this right now in Britain. The things that we're kind of built on, our institutions, are going through this time where we're actually reflecting upon them. So the royal family and the military as well. And when we actually saw the full text, or what we believe is the full text of what Harry wrote about it, it's very different to what was reported on. is very different to what was reported on. So this is some of what he wrote, and I believe this is a threat because the power that these publications have and these ideas have is that we never look into them too deeply. So if you look too deeply into the idea of the royal family, you'll see that it doesn't make any sense. A system based on hereditary birthright does not make sense in 2022. And what Harry's written as a soldier here is, while in the heat and fog of combat, I didn't think of those 25 as people. You can't kill people if you think of them as people. You can't really harm people if you think of them as people. They were chess pieces removed from the board, bads taken away before they could kill goods. I'd been trained to otherize them, trained well. On some level, I recognised this learned detachment as problematic, but I also saw it as an unavoidable part of soldiering. Now, none of that is untrue. Is it distasteful? Of course it is. If you're someone who is, you know, like, I keep saying this, but who's very questioning of how we train soldiers and our military and how we use our military, of course it's worrying. There is nothing here that this is not abnormal. I mean, people are delusional. This is what war means, and this is what it means if you support the military, and this is what soldiers do. I can't believe we are having these patriotic people supporting the military until those soldiers actually talk about the fact that it does have like a moral cost to kill, and they have to be trained out of it, and you have to otherize people in order to fight against them in a war. I mean, I would have thought that's just obvious. Surely that's just obvious to anyone normal, that that's the process and that's how soldiers are trained. And, you know, if we look at any regime in history, I mean, good or bad, but I mean, so one that I talk about a lot is, for example, we've got Israel and the Palestine situation, where, you know, you've got good people, good Israeli teenagers that are then drafted into the IDF, which is called the Israeli Defense Force, which is more like an offense force, really. You know, you see these horrific attacks against the Palestinians and the way there's a dehumanization of the Palestinians, and that's how, you know, they can be killed and their land can be taken, and you know, children can be held at checkpoints and arrested. And it's not because, you know, I don't believe that there is ultimate evil in this world. You know, I think most people have good in them. And I think the way that bad things happen is that bad faith actors can turn the good that people have and turn them on the wrong subject. 100% that's what I think it is, because I think there's more good in the world. So the trick is that you trick good people, you actually condition them to make them feel like they are fighting for good. Because you'll see that, you know, these are people who they're not bad people. They are conditioned. They are taught to see these people as dangerous, as other, as the bad to their good. The humanity's gone, and that's where the atrocities happen, right? And we see this throughout history. So I think what he's written here is quite, it's incredibly interesting as someone, you know, with my own politics, but it's also very threatening to them, because it's actually breaking that silence of, you know, patriot, this is what war means, soldiers and war heroes, and if they get hurt, you know, they go and do the Invictus Games or something, and we don't hear from them again. You know, it's the glorious myth. It makes our soldiers human. It makes the conflict more immediate. As soon as you inject humanity into something, if you ask yourself, what if it was me, what if it was my family, things become so much harder, right? And that's how our society moves more towards diplomacy and more towards peacekeeping and authenticity and being honest with people and talking about our military and having those conversations. Obviously, those in power don't want us to have those conversations, so this is a threat. They're actually turning on one of their own, somebody they groomed in, taught that this was the way to be, because he's speaking about it. He's broken the rule, apparently. You're not supposed to talk about it. We expect you to go out there and kill people and we'll cheer you for it, but don't you dare talk about it. Don't talk about the reality. And there's also this, and I think this is a huge part. So the part that we've got released is, Harry writes this: Afghanistan was a war of mistakes, a war of enormous collateral damage, thousands of innocents killed and maimed, and that always haunted us. And again, I'm not saying Harry is anti-war. You know, he hasn't spoken about that. He's got a lot of ties to the military. He's lived in a family where that's seen as, you know, is so connected to his family. And a lot of young people in this country are very connected to the military through their family and, you know, through not badness, but goodness. Through wanting to make the world better. You know, it's not an evil. So this, in the context, what he's saying about the dehumanization of people, this in the context of him saying that actually the war was a war of mistakes, it was a war of enormous collateral damage. And this is the threat. Harry is not super left-wing, okay? I'd say he's probably a liberal, right? But this, even this is a threat. Because it makes people think about war. It makes people think about the war on terror. It makes people think about Afghanistan and Iraq. And that's horrifying for our media and for our governments, right? And for our politicians, because most of them went along with it. It's all part of the Britain myth, right? with every little thing that's spoken, the Britain myth falls slightly more. And that's why these journalists and the media are so, they're so on the attack with this. They have to shut it down. They have to shut these conversations down, because this is scary. This is not coming from a left-wing anti-war person. This is coming from somebody who has ties to the military. This is a big danger for them. It makes us reevaluate the way they spoke about the war and the way they have used their coverage, right? It's interesting how much truthfulness disturbs a system that is built on lies. The truth coming from somebody, unpalatable as it is, shouldn't destabilize, but it is destabilizing, and that's how deep this goes. But anyway, I hope I haven't gone on too much. I have a lot of my own feelings about the military, etc., and they're very complex feelings. Like I said, I'm a Christian, so I am very much anti-war if we can possibly help it. Some of my favourite quotes on this, and again, like, if you're not religious, it's absolutely fine. I was raised an atheist. I respect people of all religions, or people with no religions. Like, it doesn't make you better or worse or more good or bad. We all find faith in different things, whether that be in people or in God, or, you know, in the natural world. Just a couple of quotes I really like. So, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. I also love, put your sword back in its place, for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. So anyway, I want to wrap this up by I'm going to read the tweets that I made, because I always articulate better in tweets, and then when I come to a video, I just talk rubbish. I know I do. It's not good. But so this is what I tweeted, and I'll be making more videos because we've got the interview with Harry. But this, for me, has been one of the most bizarre things coming from Britain, seeing how pro-military they are, to the extent that it's a big deal if you don't wear a red poppy. Say you were to wear a white poppy instead, like the white poppy of peace. That would be that's unthinkable here. You know, there'd be huge think pieces on it. It would be massive. To see them doing this because they hate him so much, it's shocking. It's really shocking. And that's how much of a threat he obviously poses to them. But okay. I can't stop thinking about how the British media hates Harry and Meghan so much that they've managed to do a complete 180 on Afghanistan. We lefties have long spoken of how the grooming of the military and dehumanisation taught is wrong. It's so bizarre to witness. I'm seeing right-wing pro-military poppy fascist types now claim ignorance about what it means to be a soldier. Being a soldier, in reality, means being trained to kill and carrying out the orders of your government. I thought we all knew that. These right-wing trolls are now pretending that they do not encourage and take part in the dehumanisation of those in the Middle East, and that they do not present a false image of Britain as the noble heroes around the world. This is what they support. This is what they teach. This is what they think. Then, like magic, and I wonder why, they suddenly find the reality of war distasteful. It's so fake and insulting. Harry has provided such a problem to them because he's done what they wanted, he's become the hero of the military, he's done what our country claims to want and support. And now he's talking about it and laying the reality bare. I believe what they truly despise here, as well as a person coming forward about abuse in the firm/family system, which challenges conservative institutions, is a soldier detailing the dirty truth of how these individuals are taught to kill. It is distasteful, isn't it? Yes, that's the reality. It's emotional abuse, indoctrination, and dehumanisation. This is what our soldiers are taught. This is what they are paid to do. You don't get to support that and now act squeamish. So yeah, I just think it's extremely politically interesting, being someone who is always watching how the military is portrayed in this country. To see them do this, to have such hatred for Harry that they've completely 180'd on it, it's just astounding. It really is astounding, and it makes me wonder how much more they're covering, what they think he's going to say. I mean, they're trying everything they can. They're platforming the Taliban at this point. It's just remarkable. But, okay. Love you loads. Hope I articulated myself well here. I know it's a really complicated issue, but, yeah. And I hope I made my biases pretty clear as well, because I don't want to be, you know, I want you to know my biases when I talk, because it wouldn't be fair otherwise. But, yeah, I love you loads, and hope you're well, and I'll see you really soon. All right, love you. Bye.